Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
She said it while scheduling meetings on her phone, the same way someone might comment on the weather forecast. I need to be honest. I don't believe in this marriage anymore. I don't think I ever really did. I was making breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, the Sunday morning routine we'd maintained for 5 years. I turned off the stove, set down the spatula, and looked at her. Really looked at her for probably the first time in months. Thank you for saying that out loud, I said. I've been waiting for you to acknowledge it. She stopped mid-email, her thumb frozen above the screen. What do you mean, waiting? Exactly what I said. You just articulated something I've been tracking for 18 months. I appreciate the honesty. The look on her face was perfect confusion mixed with irritation. Like I'd just agreed that water is wet, but somehow she found it surprising. Don't you want to talk about this? What's to talk about? You don't believe in our marriage. That's a pretty definitive statement. I turned back to the stove and started dividing the eggs onto 2 plates out of habit. You've just saved us both a lot of time. I think we need to see a couples therapist, she said, defaulting to what I recognized as her standard control tactic. Frame the problem, propose the solution, maintain narrative control. No, I said simply. When someone tells me they don't believe in something, I listen. You don't need therapy to believe in a marriage. You either do or you don't. You just told me you don't. I ate breakfast while she stared at me like I'd announced I was moving to Mars. The eggs were good. I'd gotten better at cooking over the years, mostly because she'd stopped pretending my meals met her standards around year 3. Monday morning, I called 2 divorce attorneys before she woke up. Had an appointment scheduled with the better one for Tuesday at 2. People think I'm passive because I'm accommodating. They're not the same thing. Passive means you don't make decisions. Accommodating means you make the decision to prioritize someone else's needs. The moment someone tells you they don't value that accommodation, you're free to stop. She came downstairs while I was reviewing my notes for the attorney consultation. You're up early, she said carefully. Productive morning. Found a good attorney. Reviewing our asset situation before tomorrow's meeting. Her coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. Tomorrow's meeting? Initial divorce consultation. 2 o'clock. Should have preliminary paperwork by end of week. You can't be serious. Dead serious. You said you don't believe in this marriage and never really did. I'm taking you at your word. What would be the point in dragging this out? She sat down across from me with that careful, measured movement people use when they're trying to appear calm. Don't you think you're moving a little fast? Fast? You just told me you never believed in our marriage. That means our entire 5 years together was built on something you didn't value. I'd say I'm being efficient. But we should at least try counseling. Give it a real chance. I looked up from my spreadsheet. A real chance at what? Teaching you to believe in something you've concluded you don't? That's not therapy, that's coercion. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. This wasn't going according to whatever script she had in mind. I could see the gears turning as she tried to figure out her next move. You're being deliberately obtuse, she finally said. I'm being literal. You know this about me. I'm a systems architect. I look for patterns, I debug problems, I optimize processes. The pattern in our marriage has been clear for 18 months. You just articulated the conclusion I'd already reached. What pattern? I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. Not my regular notes. The encrypted one I'd been maintaining since I first recognized the systemic issues in our relationship. Want to see? Her face went pale. You've been keeping notes? I document systems failures. It's what I do professionally. I scrolled through entries. July 15th, 2 years ago. You made the decision to move to Seattle for your promotion without asking my opinion. Told me after you'd already accepted. September 23rd, same year. You introduced me to your new colleagues as my husband who works in tech. No mention of what I actually do. March 8th, last year. I suggested postponing your MBA to work on our relationship. You told me I was being emotionally needy and holding you back. I kept scrolling. Should I continue? I've got 5 years of data here. Dates, contexts, patterns of behavior. You don't believe in this marriage? The documentation supports that conclusion. You've been showing me for years. You just finally said it out loud. She stared at the phone like it was evidence at a crime scene. Which, in a way, it was. That's insane, she whispered. That's pattern recognition. I'm good at my job. Turns out the same skills work on relationships. The data doesn't lie. You don't value me. You don't respect my career. You make unilateral decisions that affect both our lives. The only surprising thing about yesterday's conversation was that you finally verbalized what your actions have been saying all along. She started to say something, then stopped. For the first time in our entire relationship, she didn't have a rebuttal ready. Tuesday's consultation with the attorney went exactly as I expected. Attorney Williams was a sharp woman in her 50s who'd clearly seen every variation of divorce drama. She listened to my summary, reviewed my documentation, and nodded. Mr. Bennett, this is one of the most organized initial consultations I've had in 20 years. You've got everything categorized, dated, cross-referenced. Most clients come in emotional and unprepared. You come in with a data analysis. Is that a problem? The opposite. Makes my job significantly easier. Washington is a no-fault state, so your documentation is more about establishing patterns than proving wrongdoing. But this tells me you're someone who makes thoughtful decisions. You're not acting impulsively. I never act impulsively. I analyze, I assess, I decide, I implement. This situation is no different. She pulled out her intake forms. Let's get started. By the time I got home, my wife had apparently spent the day making phone calls. I could tell because she had that frantic energy that comes from getting advice you don't want to hear. I talked to my sister, she announced as soon as I walked through the door. Good for you. How is she? She thinks you're having some kind of midlife crisis. I actually laughed. A midlife crisis? That's what we're calling it when someone accepts a clearly stated position. You're not being reasonable about this. I'm being perfectly reasonable. You said you don't believe in our marriage. I'm acting accordingly. What's unreasonable about that? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Let me guess what else your sister said. I continued. She probably told you that all marriages go through rough patches, right? That I just need time to cool off. Maybe suggested you give me some space, and I'll come crawling back. Her expression told me I'd hit the target. Here's the problem with that theory. It assumes I was acting out of emotion instead of logic. This isn't a rough patch. This isn't a phase. This is me finally accepting what you've been telling me for 5 years, that I'm not the husband you want, that you don't believe in this marriage. Your words, not mine. I found an apartment that week, a loft in the tech district, modern and minimalist, with a dedicated home office that actually functioned for how I work. The whole place was optimized for productivity and comfort. My productivity, my comfort. 5 years living in places she chose. This one was mine. The move happened fast. I'm efficient when I commit to a course of action. My wife kept trying to initiate talks about our situation, but there was nothing to talk about. She'd made a statement. I'd accepted it. The rest was just logistics. Where are you going? She asked when I loaded the last box into my car. Signed a lease on a place downtown. Move-in date is Saturday. Just like that? You're just leaving? Just like that. You said you don't believe in our marriage. Why would I stay in a situation neither of us believes in? But I didn't mean we should just end everything immediately. I stopped loading the car and looked at her. Then what exactly did you mean? And there it was, that moment where she realized she didn't have a good answer because the truth was she'd been trying to create an emotional reaction, and instead she got immediate action. I meant maybe we should work on things, she said weakly. Work on what? You don't believe in this marriage. You said you never really did. That's not something therapy fixes. That's just reality. My new place felt right from day one. I unpacked systematically, set up my home office exactly how I wanted it, arranged my books without having to negotiate shelf space. The first morning I made coffee on my schedule, in my kitchen, without anyone commenting on how I was doing it wrong. Revolutionary concept. I'd also accepted that promotion I'd been postponing. Senior systems architect at a remote-first company, significant raise, actual creative control over projects. My new manager called me personally. We've been trying to recruit you for 2 years. Glad you're finally available. Turned out, available was the right word. I'd been making myself unavailable for my own opportunities while making myself available for hers. The tech conference was something I'd skipped for years. My wife found tech culture tedious and bro-why, and I'd accommodated that by not attending events she didn't want to come to. But now I was sitting in on a panel about distributed systems architecture, actually engaged in conversation with peers who understood what I did for a living. That's where I met Rebecca Torres. She was another architect, presenting on fault-tolerant design patterns. After her panel, we ended up in the same coffee line and started talking about her approach. Within 5 minutes, we were deep into technical discussion, sketching diagrams on napkins, building on each other's ideas. You should submit a paper on this, she said, looking at our combined notes. This is actually novel. Maybe we both should. Seems like a collaborative framework. She smiled. I like how you think. Want to grab dinner and keep working on this? We talked for 3 hours. About systems design, about the conference, about our respective companies. When I mentioned I was recently separated, she didn't get awkward or start fishing for drama. Fresh starts can be good, she said simply. More time to focus on interesting work. No judgment, no therapy speak, no attempt to analyze my situation. Just straightforward acknowledgement and a redirect to neutral territory. I got a text from her the next day. Still thinking about that fault tolerance framework. Want to actually write it up together? We started collaborating on the paper. She'd send over sections. I'd refine the technical diagrams. We'd video chat to work through the theoretical components. The collaboration was effortless in a way I'd forgotten work could be. No competing egos, no dismissiveness, just two people building something together because we both found it interesting. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed regularly with texts from my wife. I'd stopped responding to most of them after the first week of circular conversations. She wanted to talk things through, wanted to try counseling, wanted me to give us another chance. The thing was, I didn't want another chance with her. I wanted the chance I was already taking, the one where I got to be myself without constant judgment. 3 weeks after I moved out, she showed up at my building. I was reviewing code on my laptop when the doorman called up. There's someone here to see you. Says she's your wife? Tell her I'm not available. She's quite insistent, sir. I sighed. I'll come down. She was pacing in the lobby, nervous energy radiating off her like heat. Nice place, she said, trying to peer past me toward the elevators. Very you. Thanks. What do you need? Straight to the point. No small talk. No pretending this was a social visit. I wanted to see where you're living now. Wanted to talk. We've talked plenty. You said the marriage wasn't working. I agreed. End of story. But I've been thinking. That's a dangerous habit. She blinked. Excuse me? Overthinking. Reframing. Trying to optimize your narrative after the fact. I'm a literal person. You know this. You said you don't believe in our marriage and never really did. I heard you. I acted on that information. That's how communication works. Don't you miss what we had? I actually had to think about that. No, I don't miss walking on eggshells. I don't miss having my career treated as less important than yours. I don't miss being introduced as my husband who works in tech instead of by my actual name and accomplishments. What exactly should I miss? Her face cycled through emotions, surprise, hurt, anger, back to manipulation mode. You're different. You're right. I'm happier. I'm more productive. I actually enjoy my own company again. Funny how that works when you're not constantly being told you're inadequate. My phone buzzed with a text. Rebecca, sharing an article she'd found relevant to our paper. I smiled and typed back a quick response. Who's that? My wife's voice had an edge to it. A colleague. What kind of colleague? The kind that treats me like a peer instead of a disappointment. I put my phone away. Look, I appreciate you stopping by, but I've got work to finish tonight. Drive safe. I didn't wait to see her reaction. I had a paper to co-author and a life to build. The phone calls from mutual friends started about a week later. Tom from our old neighborhood called with what he probably thought was subtle curiosity. Hey man, just checking in. Heard you and the wife are having some issues. No issues, I replied while debugging a particularly tricky section of code. We had different ideas about whether our marriage was working. Turns out we were both right. But she's telling everyone you just up and left without warning. Said you're going through some kind of breakdown. I stopped typing. A breakdown. That's interesting. What else is she saying? Well, Tom sounded uncomfortable now. She mentioned you're not thinking clearly. Maybe drinking too much. Making impulsive decisions. She's worried about you. The picture became clearer with each call. She'd apparently launched a campaign to rewrite the narrative. According to her version, I was unstable and having a crisis, while she was the concerned wife trying to save our marriage. When my college buddy Jake called with a similar story, I decided to set the record straight. Jake, let me ask you something. In all the times we've hung out over the past couple years, how many times did she criticize something I said or did in front of you? There was a long pause. I mean, she had opinions about things. How many times did she roll her eyes when I was talking? How many times did she correct me or make little comments about my choices? Another pause. Longer this time. Okay. Yeah, she could be pretty harsh sometimes. So when she tells you I'm having a breakdown because I finally stopped accepting that treatment, does that sound like someone who's lost his mind or someone who's found his backbone? The call stopped after that. Word travels fast, and apparently my side of the story made more sense to people who'd actually witnessed our interactions. But she wasn't done. For weeks after I'd moved out, I was having lunch with Rebecca at a local cafe when my phone started buzzing. Then kept buzzing. By the time I checked, there were 17 messages waiting. Everything okay? Rebecca asked, noticing my expression. I scrolled through them. They started reasonable enough. We need to talk about dividing up the wedding gifts, but quickly devolved into emotional manipulation. I can't believe you're throwing away 5 years like they meant nothing. And eventually landed in full desperation territory. I know you're seeing someone. How could you move on so fast? My ex-wife is having what you might call a moment of clarity, I said, showing Rebecca the screen. She glanced at the messages and winced. Yikes. That's a lot of emotional dumping for a Tuesday afternoon. Want to know the funny part? She's the one who said the marriage wasn't working. But apparently when I agreed with her, that wasn't part of her plan. Rebecca took a sip of her coffee. Some people like to create problems they can then solve dramatically. Makes them feel important. When you solve the problem quietly and efficiently, you take away their starring role in the drama. That night, the texts escalated. She'd apparently driven by my building and seen Rebecca's car in the parking garage. We'd been working on final edits for our paper, but according to the messages flooding my phone, I was already sleeping with someone else, replacing 5 years of marriage in a month. I turned off my phone and focused on the work. Rebecca and I were close to submitting the paper for peer review. The technical framework was solid, the writing was clear, and working with someone who respected my expertise was proving to be exactly what my career needed. This is nice, Rebecca said as we wrapped up for the night. Collaborative work where both people actually contribute equally. Yeah, it is. I'd forgotten what that felt like. The next morning brought a new development. My wife had apparently scheduled an appointment with a therapist and wanted me to know about it. I'm getting help, she texted. Dr. Peterson says couples therapy could save our marriage if we're both willing to put in the work. I texted back, good for you. Personal growth is always positive. Will you come with me? No. Why not? Because we're getting divorced. Divorced people don't need couples therapy. But if we could work things out. We did work things out. You said the marriage wasn't working. I agreed and took action to solve the problem. Problem solved. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Then you should have been more careful with your words. Words have consequences. The mediation session was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Attorney Williams had prepared me for what to expect, but nothing could have prepared me for the performance my wife decided to put on. She arrived 15 minutes late, eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying, clutching tissues like a prop. Her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Morrison, seemed less impressed with the performance than my wife had hoped. Sorry I'm late, she sniffled. This is just so hard for me. I sat quietly while she launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech about how I'd abandoned our marriage without warning, how she was devastated by my sudden change in personality, how she just wanted her husband back. When she finished, the mediator looked at me expectantly. Do you have a response to any of that? I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app. Actually, I do. I've been recording our conversations since she started showing up places uninvited. Figured it might be relevant. The color drained from her face. I played a 30-second clip from our building lobby encounter where she admitted she didn't mean it the way it sounded, that it was just stress. Then I played another from a coffee shop parking lot where she'd contradicted herself about when she'd started doubting the marriage. These recordings span the last month, I said calmly. They show a pattern of attempting to control the narrative through emotional manipulation rather than genuine concern for our relationship. Her attorney leaned over and whispered something to her. My wife's face went from pale to bright red. He's recording me without permission, she protested. Williams cleared his throat. Actually, Washington is a one-party consent state. The recordings are perfectly legal. The mediator made notes while listening to 2 more clips where my wife contradicted her own story about why our marriage had problems. Is there anything else you'd like to add? The mediator asked me. Just this. She said our marriage wasn't working and that she never really believed in it. I agreed. Everything that's happened since then has been my response to her accurate assessment of our relationship. The fact that she's surprised by the consequences doesn't change the validity of her original statement. The property division went smoothly after that. No dramatic objections, no attempts to claim emotional distress. Just a quiet, business-like division of assets between two adults who were clearly better apart than together. As we left the building, she cornered me in the parking lot one last time. "Those recordings were a low blow," she said. "Those recordings were evidence. There's a difference. You wanted to paint me as unstable and manipulative. I just let people hear what our actual conversation sounded like. I never called you unstable. You told Tom I was having a breakdown. You told Jake I was drinking too much and making impulsive decisions. Should I play those recordings too?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Even she couldn't argue with her own words. "This isn't how I wanted things to end," she said quietly. "No, you wanted them to end with me begging you to reconsider while you held all the power. But here's what you never understood. I wasn't the desperate one in this relationship. I was just the accommodating one. When I stopped accommodating, you lost your audience." The final divorce papers were signed 2 weeks later. No drama, no last-minute pleas, no surprise appearances. Just signatures on legal documents that made official what had been emotionally true for months. My life had settled into something genuinely satisfying. The paper Rebecca and I wrote was accepted for publication in a major technical journal. My new role was challenging in the best way. I'd rejoined my weekly poker game that I'd abandoned years ago. Started rock climbing again. Small things that added up to feeling like myself. Rebecca had started keeping a few things at my place. A coffee mug, a favorite jacket, some books on the nightstand. Small signs of a life being built together instead of torn apart. "Is this okay?" she'd asked when she noticed her things mixing with mine. "More than okay. It feels right." And it did. Everything about this new life felt right in a way my old life never had, even in its best moments. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was installing new shelving in my home office when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see my ex-wife standing on the doorstep. But this time she looked different, less desperate, more composed. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. "You look good," she said. And for once, it didn't sound like manipulation. "Thanks. How are you doing?" "Better, actually. I've been seeing Dr. Peterson regularly. Real therapy this time, not just ammunition for getting you back." She managed a weak smile. I wanted to apologize. I leaned against the doorframe, curious where this was going. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how I treated you, about the things I said and did." She took a breath. "You were right. I was critical and dismissive. I made you feel small because it made me feel bigger." "Okay, I appreciate you saying that. The thing is, I didn't realize how good I had it. How good you were to me, even when I wasn't good to you." Her voice cracked slightly. "Dr. Peterson helped me understand that when I said the marriage wasn't working, what I really meant was that I wasn't happy with myself, and I was taking it out on you." I stayed quiet, letting her finish. "I know it's too late now. I know you've moved on, and honestly, I can see why. But I wanted you to know that I understand what I lost. I lost someone who loved me even when I didn't deserve it." "You're right," I said simply. "It is too late." She nodded, tears flowing freely now. "I know. Is there any chance we could try again? I'm different now. I'm working on myself. I understand what I did wrong." I looked at this woman who had once been the center of my world, who had slowly chipped away at my self-worth until I'd forgotten who I was without her criticism. Here's the problem with that idea. You didn't have a moment of doubt about our marriage. You had years of showing me exactly how you felt about me. You didn't accidentally say those words. They came from somewhere real. But people can change. Maybe they can. But I'm not interested in finding out. You had 5 years to appreciate what you had. You chose to spend those years tearing it down instead. I straightened up. I'm happy now. Genuinely happy with someone who chose to build me up from day one. Is it serious with her? Serious enough that I don't spend my time wondering if she's going to respect me today or find fault with everything I do. Serious enough that I remember what it feels like to be someone's first choice instead of their project. Her face crumpled. I was scared. I was scared of being happy because I thought if I found fault with everything, I couldn't be disappointed when it ended. So you ended it yourself? Self-fulfilling prophecy. I realize that now. Good. That's growth. Take it into your next relationship and don't make the same mistakes. I started to close the door, then paused. And stop telling people you had a moment of doubt. Be honest about what actually happened. You spent years deciding our marriage wasn't working. Then you finally said it out loud. The only moment involved was when you realized I was listening. I closed the door and went back to my shelving project. That evening, Rebecca came over to help me celebrate finishing the office setup. We ordered Thai food and opened a bottle of wine. "How do you feel?" she asked as we sorted through containers. "Relieved. Free. Like I can finally stop looking over my shoulder waiting for the next dramatic confrontation." I opened my beer and took a sip. She spent so much energy trying to prove I was making a mistake that she never stopped to consider whether she actually wanted me back or just wanted to win. And now she gets to figure out what she actually wants instead of just reacting to what I'm doing. I raise my bottle. And I get to keep building something real with someone who actually enjoys my company. Rebecca clinked her bottle against mine. To people who say what they mean and mean what they say. And to people who listen when they hear it. 2 years later, Rebecca and I got married. Not because we were trying to prove anything or fill a void, but because we'd found something worth building together. Small wedding, just close friends and family. Simple and genuine. My ex heard about it through mutual connections. She sent a card. "Congratulations. I'm glad you found happiness." I appreciated the gesture, but I didn't need her approval anymore. During my wedding toast, I looked at Rebecca and said, "To my wife, who never had to learn to value me because she did from the start." Later that night, as Rebecca and I were leaving the reception, someone asked if I ever regretted not giving my first marriage another chance. "No," I said, "because here's the thing about second chances. They're for people who made mistakes, not for people who finally told the truth." She didn't believe in our marriage. She said so. I just did what anyone should do when someone tells them something fundamental. I listened. The lapse in judgment wasn't what she said. It was the 5 years she spent not saying it while I accommodated, adjusted, and diminished myself trying to be enough for someone who'd already decided I wasn't. Lapses do come with consequences. This one came with freedom. Mine.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.